Listen up, you beautiful, beautiful people. From the shadow of Graceland, it's the 901 Soccer Podcast. I'm Scotty Smith, and I will be your host. I am joined by Alan Davis, Facebook coordinator and all things local youth soccer. And also tonight by a repeated guest, Lawrence Dockery of World Soccer Talk. We've been looking forward to this for a while because Lawrence teased on Twitter and other forms of social media that if Alan Davis, the word here is if Greg Berhalter were to be named head coach of the U.S. men's national team, then he would have a peace in waiting. And I think that the right word would probably be scathing. Can you think of a better word for Lawrence's opinion of the Berhalter situation than the word scathing?
No, that's really good. I think he had inside information because he was preparing this for a long time. He knew it was coming. He's got like insight or something. So
Yeah, or he might have connected the dots that the vice president of U.S. Soccer also has the last name Berhalter.
Yeah, well,
one of those two things.
That helps.
Or it could have been both of them. Lawrence, welcome to the show, sir. We're glad you're back.
Hey, it's good to be back. Not sure how I feel about being called an offender, but
sorry, that was an accident.
I'll live.
Just yellow card, you'll be all right.
Oh, I'm very familiar with all of that. It's good to be back, and Alan touched on it. This was a long time coming, this piece, and I personally feel like it's the best thing I've ever written. And scathing, I don't even think begins to describe it. And it was, it was. But we'll get into all of that later. I don't want to get too fired up too early.
Yeah, we'll kind of save that to the end. We'll build up to that. Let's talk for a little bit about. We've got some news coming out of Memphis, Tennessee. We are recording this in mid-December, kind of a weird deal because usually we wait till the end of the month. But there is so much news right now, Alan Davis, that seems to be stuff that we need to address. And the first thing that we want to address is. We want to talk for just a little bit about the 3 new signings that are now on the books, officially on the books, with Memphis 901 FC. If you want to comment on any of these, you can, either one of you, but I would like to kind of just sort of introduce the players themselves, and then we'll play a little, we're going to modify trivia tonight. We're going to modify it. We're going to play, instead of multiple choice, we will play true-false. Okay? Right. It'll be a short round of true-false. We are starting to develop a little bit of a Caribbean theme, okay, with Memphis 901 FC. In fact, we did not lead in with our normal intro music tonight. We went with a little Bob Marley instead because... our Caribbean theme seems to be taking root here.
Did you include the Wailers with Bob Marley?
Yeah, Bob Marley and the Wailers. So last time we talked, we had Evio Cordovez. He is from Cuba, okay? And we have now, in addition to Evio Cordovez, we have, not we, but...
the city does.
Coach Mulch and Andrew Bell have taken a trip to the Caribbean. We were not invited on this trip.
And they had to bring players back too, because if they didn't, everybody would have been like, we're going to start this club and then go on a Caribbean vacation. So
right. Yes.
It's a good thing they brought some players back.
Okay, so here we go. 3 splashes in the Caribbean surf, sand, and sun. So if you want to write down your possibility, well, no, we're going to play true false, aren't we?
Yeah.
We've got Tristan Hodge. He's a new member of the team. We welcome Tristan Hodge to Memphis. We've got Leston Paul. We welcome him to the team. Welcome to Memphis, Leston Paul. And we have Ewan Granderson. Now, that might be Evan. If it depends on the pronunciation, but I'm going to say either Ewan or Ewan. I've heard this is the spelling EWAN multiple ways in the past, depending on which nationality.
Trying to think of how Jamaicans would say. I have no clue, but we'll find out.
We will find out. Okay, now, like I said, we're going to play a modified version of True False for these 3 players. Okay, so Lawrence Dockery, we will start with you. True or false? Leston Paul played in Trinidad and Tobago's 2-1 win over the United States on October the 10th, 2017.
You're just trying to get him fired up, aren't you?
That's tough. I have done my utmost to try and put the memory of that night just so far out of my head. I don't even remember who scored the 1 goal for Trinidad. I know Omar Gonzalez had a beautiful goal that he put,
you know what? He did. He did. He did.
But I'm going to go with false.
That is actually true. He was on the field, and I likened this on Twitter to the time that the Memphis Grizzlies signed none other than University of Kansas shooting guard Mario Chalmers.
Yeah, that was painful, and none of the Grizzlies owners really even knew why. And,
clueless, right?
Yeah, everybody had to fill them in. But,
you got to know your fan base, man.
Which is super ironic because Chris Wallace has always been about drafting Kansas players, and you would have thought that he'd have put Kansas versus Memphis together, but that's expecting competency from Chris Wallace. So
yeah, well,
so what you have here is a situation where we have a couple of players who broke our hearts. Right now, not everybody in the 901 FC fan base is a supporter of the U.S. men's national team. We've got people from all different countries in our in the fan base, but for the 3 of us and for many others who are big fans of the U.S. men's national team, stings a little.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Stings a little. However, we are going to welcome these guys to Memphis wholly and completely, and we hope that they are going to win us many, many games. That is the hope. All right. Alan Davis, I ask you the following question. Tristan Hodge, true or false? True or false? Tristan Hodge was a member of the W Connection in the Trinidad and Tobago Pro League.
I remember hearing that, so I'm going to say true.
That's absolutely right. It is, in fact, true. They are the 6-time champion. So, pretty successful team down there.
Yeah. Every time not every time, but it seems like any time there's a back in the old CONCACAF Champions League format when you had a group stage, and that was always one you looked up and you almost considered it an automatic 3 points, maybe 1 if you were going down there, but you always looked up and they were always in the CCL. They
were always in it, right? And it takes a little bit. If you're a Caribbean team, it takes a little bit to get into the CCL because you've got to win the Caribbean Cup in April. So there's there's some stuff. It's not like like El Salvador, Honduras, even Belize gets an automatic bid. The Caribbean teams don't get an automatic bid. You have to win the Caribbean Cup in order to get into the Champions League. So it's a little bit, or either that, or if you finish if you get to the semis, you could somehow play your way in. The Caribbean Cup champion automatically gets in, and then the other ones have to go to a play-in or something like that. I can't remember exactly the format, but they're a team that has met with some success in. Okay, true or false? Lawrence Dockery. Leston Paul was coached by none other than Trinidad and Tobago legend Stern John. Is that true or false?
Is this like youth career or at the club level?
At
or
any point in his life.
At any point at any time. I'm going to go false.
That also is true. Stern John is the coach of Central FC. And Stern John was, of course, at one time the MLS scoring leader. He has been was recently named in October was the report that Stern John would be selected to the Columbus Crew as I think as an assistant coach, or he might. Well, I don't know. Let's see. When was? So he is now. Well, that was a Berhalter situation. So I don't know. That may be a little bit different now. He played for the Columbus Crew many long years ago. He was one of the coaches. Oh, I see what it is. He's going to be one of the coaches for the Caribbean Combine. So MLS apparently has a Caribbean Combine. I've heard there are a lot of Caribbean players in USL. But I didn't realize that there was a Caribbean Combine. We're going to learn a lot of things now that we have professional soccer. Because right now, honestly, like most of the research that we have done on the 2 podcasts that we've had, we're talking about college kids, right? Because you're talking with Memphis City, you're always talking about college kids. So you do a little research into college soccer. So how things work in the pro game, and apparently, and I didn't realize this until I started listening to a couple of USL podcasts, there is a very significant Caribbean presence in USL. So Coach McQueen has now tapped into this. He seems to know everybody. I have no doubt that he knows Stern John from his time in MLS. It only makes sense that he would go to Stern John and say, hey, man, who you got who can play at this level? We end up with Leston Paul. Excited to see where that goes.
I think they need a permanent talent scout down there, and I volunteer as tribute.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic.
I'll let them know.
When the hurricane happens, don't come crying to me.
Oh, okay.
Alan Davis for 901 FC Caribbean Scout.
Talent scout. There you go.
Caribbean Talent Scout. I'm putting you down for the reference there. I got you. If you need a letter of recommendation on your resume there.
But you do bring up an interesting point on that. Is I remember back when the qualifying started and we opened up with St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I don't want to sound like imperialistic or arrogant, but who knows anything about St. Vincent and the Grenadines, right?
Well, somebody has to.
So I did when I was writing my match preview for World Soccer Talk. I found that I was trying to research some of the team, and quite a number of their players were USL players, or USL. The guy who scored the goal for St. Vincent and up in St. Louis that game in like the 4th minute or something. Oh, what was it? I think it was like Olex Anderson. I think was his name. I know he was part of the Sounders system with the Seattle Sounders too, and that's. That just rang a bell.
Gotcha. Okay, so where do we? That takes us back to Alan Davis, right?
I think so.
Okay. True or false? True or false? Ewan Grandison raised the Jamaican trophy. I don't know what the name of the trophy. The Red Stripe Premier League trophy. The Red Stripe Premier League. That's a great name, right? Ewan Grandison raised the Red Stripe Premier League trophy with Portmore United. It's a big club in Jamaica, Portmore United.
I'm going to say true.
That is absolutely true. He did do that. Portmore United is one of the more successful clubs in Jamaican history. They are actually located in the town or city of Portmore, and which is not, I know that's not like a big tourist trap or anything like that, but they have won the Jamaican National Premier League title 6 times, including in 2017-18, right?
Awesome.
So they have he comes from and I think he was raised in this program, a successful program. All right, so again, we're getting into some stuff here where what I love about this is I'm kind of learning the Caribbean and how the game works in the Caribbean. You know, not something I've done a ton of research into, but because of these 3 signings, I'm starting to look a little bit more into Caribbean soccer. That and the whole idea, I did get off as I do. I got off on a tangent where I was trying to fix something in American soccer here recently, and I tried to completely. You'll remember when the the announcement came out that MLS and Liga MX and the Canadian Premier League might join together for one big North American Super League.
Yeah, that was what was that? That was right around All-Star game time, wasn't it?
Yep,
Yeah.
right around there. And I started thinking, okay, what can we do as an alternative to that? And then, like, I just one day on a whim restructured the CONCACAF Champions League to be like the Caribbean and Central America out of one bracket and North America as the other bracket, so that we could play Mexico and Canadian teams, cut down on travel a little bit, and then you just got one winner at the end of that, and they play each other in a big cup thing. I don't know.
Yeah, one big huge league I don't think is a good idea, but yeah, I like the idea of a CONCACAF Champions League. I think it's great.
Yeah.
So I really hope it catches on.
Which exists, but it's just not big.
It's,
Right.
It's without going off the deep end here. It's the way each league seasons are structured. I
Right.
think presents issues.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
I think just the fact that North America is ridiculously giant, where you could theoretically, if you're in the UEFA Champions League, you could theoretically be a team in Central Europe and not have to go farther than a 3-hour plane ride anywhere. Whereas in the CONCACAF Champions League, you could be the Portland Timbers in the Pacific Northwest and have to fly all the way down to the northeast coast of South America to play some team from Guyana.
Yeah.
And then fly right back. That's got to be a 12,000 mile round trip, or somewhere in that neighborhood, for one game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, Grandison only joined Central FC in August. So,
Wow.
he hasn't been playing there that long. He played for Portmore basically his whole entire life, including coming up through their system. So, let's go back over to Lawrence for just a second, and we'll try to...
I got to get this one right. My trivia credentials are taking a huge hit tonight.
Yeah.
I even brought my fancy Challenge Entertainment pen, too.
Okay. So, true or false, Leston Paul is best known as a false nine. His best position is a false nine.
It's got to be right at some point. I'm going false on this one.
That is correct. He's a midfielder. He's a midfielder. All right.
I give myself a hearty pat on the back.
Yeah, there you go. He was once called a mainstay at the heart of the Sharks midfield. The Sharks being Central FC, and they have the big old cartoony shark coming out of the logo.
Like Ole Miss.
Very much so. Yeah.
Jabberjaw.
Very much so. Yes, kind of the same type of thing. So he is going to be what I think he and Grandison will both play more of in a central midfield role. When I saw Grandison, some YouTube videos of Grandison, he seemed to be a central midfielder, even though he's wearing jersey number 9. It seemed to me like he was a true box-to-box midfielder. So going back and forth. We've got some other guys who can play out on the wing. These guys look like they may be more of your central midfielder type roles. All right. I do think Dan Metzger will play as a defensive midfielder. So we might see Grandison and Leston Paul playing in a more advanced position than Metzger. It might be, I don't know, it depends on what system we run. If I had to take a guess based on the time that we interviewed Coach Mulch, I would say that it would probably be like a 4-2-3-1, maybe attacking in a 4-3-3. Like 4-3-3 in attack and 4-2-3-1. Do my numbers break down correctly there?
I believe so,
in
yeah.
defense.
Sounds about right.
Math was never my strong suit.
No, man, I think that's probably about right.
You have enough fingers. Come on, you can make it.
All right.
There's 11 players, and I only have 10 fingers.
Yeah, well, there's always only one goalkeeper, so
That's true.
you can usually count that as
So
a solid one.
our last question then is because we're going to end on a positive note there, Lawrence. Our last question is for Alan Davis, and so my question for you here is true or false? Tristan Hodge in the past has been in the system for an MLS team?
In the past, been in the system, meaning that he's actually played time in. Okay, I'm going to say true.
That is true. In 2016, he played 3 matches for Toronto FC 2.
But it was too cold, so he had to go home.
But pretty much. That's not that far off.
Plus, everyone always loves to brag about Toronto, the city, and probably 3-4 years ago, maybe, but I didn't get to go because I had to work. But most of my family took a trip through Canada, and they went to Montreal and Quebec and all of that, and then they went to Toronto, and they said Toronto was just kind of,
just a city, right? Just,
it was there.
It's big,
and
maybe you got to know like the hot spots or whatever.
Yeah, maybe so.
One of those things where you got to be a local to really kind of appreciate it. Tristan Hodge is only 22 years old. That's good. That bodes well. And so it'd be good to get him on the field and see. We got a fairly young team that we're developing here. You got a few guys like Cordonez, who I think is 29. Wes Sharpie is 26, but for the most part, kind of looking at sort of a younger team. So that's going to wrap it up for our little study, if you will. We were going to try to go 15 minutes on that. We went 20. I think these guys deserve 20 minutes.
Sure.
And I'm really glad that they, are joining this team. I do think that this gives it kind of a different flavor in attack as far as, some of the things that we're going to see. I don't know. You may disagree with me on this, Alan, and you see this every week, Lawrence. But I do think that if you have too many guys who grew up in the same system in the attack, and by the same system I mean just the American youth soccer system. If you have too many of those guys in the attack together, you don't get the style points that a lot of fans want to see. And I think that style points, winning of course is the main thing, but like the Caribbean players and even Central American players seem to take a few more chances on the ball, than a lot of the guys that we have playing in a very technical, here's a 90-degree angle pass, a 90-degree angle pass, a 90-degree angle pass, switch, and every once in a while, I liked it personally. I like to see a little bit of flair, and just having watched some of these guys on just their YouTube videos, I've seen a little bit of flair, and I'm down with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, I think I could agree with that statement. I mean, if you take too many samples from the same basket, they're all going to look the same and play the same and have the same style. And if you are getting a little bit here, a little bit there, from different places, it's certainly going to make for an interesting mix.
Yeah.
And
variety is a good thing.
Yeah, the flexibility and the variety, and I think that lends credence to that. So, yeah.
All right, so let's get on to our next topic. We're going to work 2 topics into one. We've crowned 2 champions since the last time that we've done this. Louisville City has won yet another title.
Boo.
And Atlanta United has won their first title.
Yeah.
I'm rather proud of the fact that we actually went and we attended a match in the year that they won the title. It's not like, the fans had to wait that long or anything like that. But I will say this. If you had told me 3 years ago that this would happen this soon, I would have called you absolutely stone cold crazy, because my thought was, in addition to the fact that it will not be extremely well attended, and we've covered the attendance thing, my fear and worry was, okay, what international players have ever even heard of Atlanta, much less agree to go to Atlanta? The signing of Tata Martino was such an unbelievable difference maker for this team. And it made it, that and the attendance, made it the cool thing to do. And now Atlanta United is MLS champion.
Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, like you said, 3 years ago, Atlanta was not a soccer city.
Right.
3 years ago, soccer did not exist in Atlanta. They were Falcons and Hawks and other birds. But,
And the Braves. I mean, the Braves have a huge fan base.
Yeah, they do. And it was unimaginable. And now to watch that game, 73,000 people. I mean, when we went, they didn't have the upper tier open. It was just 43,000, and it was so loud you couldn't hear yourself think.
It was deafening.
You could pick it up on that broadcast. I mean, it was unreal loud, and it's just an awesome atmosphere. And the thing that strikes me the most, I mean, all the great things about what went on there was, we've talked about the demographic of soccer appealing to the younger crowd, and a lot of people say, well, they got to appeal to an international audience. You've got to draw in the Hispanics, and you've got to draw in the Asians and everything else. And when we went, sure, there were Latinos, there were Asians, there were a lot of white folks, there were a lot of black folks. I mean,
it was just mixed. It's like the true melting pot, and everybody was getting along. That was what was so great,
And I joked with you that I think the team name United is so just played out because everybody wants to be like Manchester United, DC United, Atlanta United. It just is like, oh yeah, you're going to name another team United. When we went and were in the Gulch there with the tailgaters and everything, that team unites that city.
It does.
And
it's a perfect name.
It is absolutely perfect. Probably more so than even Manchester.
Yeah.
But everybody was there, from different walks of life, from different backgrounds, different races, everything. And they all were there with the same purpose. And it was absolutely beautiful. And it was just great. It is the image of what soccer should be, and this is happening in the U.S. and in the South.
There is a new team that is coming to Atlanta. It will be in the new division, which is NISA, the National Independent Soccer Association, and they tweeted out the other day, happy to bring soccer to the new capital, U.S. capital for soccer. I don't think that there's any way that team's going to be able to get any kind of traction going at all because the Silverbacks still have a small contingent of fans. Their ultras are very, very dedicated to the team, and Atlanta United has captured everybody else as far as soccer goes, and I just don't think that that's
unfortunately,
really I don't think it's a good market to go. Yeah. I think that market is taken.
Well, it just kind of sounds like they're trying to ride the coattails of somebody else's success.
It kind of does, doesn't it?
Yeah. I hope the best for them, but I agree with you.
One thing that I don't know that it drives me crazy, but I just sit there and look and go, what are you thinking? Who are these people running around? And don't, listeners out there, don't mistake this that I think the way the system is set up is all hunky-dory and peachy and everything's perfect. No, but my point, what I'm about to say is, do we really need another basically single-A startup league?
That's what it is.
I mean, what are you going to accomplish? What are you going to? Yeah, you may some dude. You may take some dude working the drive-through at Popeyes or something, and
not that there's anything wrong with
no. I mean, I worked in fast food. I worked in the kitchen at Zaxby's for a year and a half. So I'm, but you're not. There's no sustainability there.
Right.
I mean. There's people out there that are not on board with the business practices of MLS, and that's a whole different thing for a whole different day. But that's MLS and USL are about the only game in town now, and they've pretty much got the market cornered.
Yeah.
And playing in high school stadiums with, I mean, you can say, hey, I'm on this professional soccer team, so technically I'm a professional soccer player, but
yeah. Well, okay, so the only other thing that I would deem as cool would be if I like to see what happens with an individual club, like for instance Chattanooga FC. I want to see what happens with them, so I'll pay attention to NPSL just enough to see what happens with Chattanooga FC.
They are the exception to the rule.
Well,
I mean, they get what? I mean, they played Atlanta in a preseason game last year and got 15-something thousand people, I think, for it, and they had the NPSL final there several years ago and sold the Finley Stadium out for it. So
I want to see what happens with them, just because we kind of have some friends in the supporters group and stuff like that from the Memphis City days, and I think it'll be great to for them to just extend their season. That's basically with NPSL. All they're really doing, they're going to play the NPSL season, and then they're just going to extend. There are some teams, or maybe 12 teams, that are going to extend the season, and they're all going to play each other maybe one time.
And Chattanooga will wind up in the USL at some point. I mean,
well, not USL. They don't.
You don't think so?
Because they don't like the model. They were offered USL.
Yeah.
They were offered.
I mean, I just
that's why that group, that Chattanooga Red Wolves group, came in to USL 3 because USL offered Chattanooga, and they said we don't like the model where it's not just single entity; it's even worse than that. Like one guy basically owns the USL, and then you buy a franchise. Alex Papacanis, I don't know.
I'm just saying, at some point, if they want to play at a high level, they're going to have to, and that's what I mean by that. I think they'll wind up there
unless they build out NPSL to be a full-time year-round pro league, which it's going to be tough to do. It's going to be tough to do
with the strength that the MLS and USL have got going forward. Like Lawrence is kind of implying, I think it's going to crowd the smaller leagues out eventually.
And here's another thing is, like with Atlanta and with a new thing going on in Chattanooga, it was like, oh, we want to get in and we want to help create culture, or all the other buzzwords that get thrown out there. Mm-hmm. But when you're say Chattanooga, right? Chattanooga's not a big town. Right. So
it's the 99th largest television market.
And I mean, I've been to Chattanooga once in my life, and it was to do a high school football game back when I attended CBHS. That was an interesting experience. But it's not a big enough city, and the soccer is not big enough in Chattanooga that you can have two minor league soccer teams there.
Right, and I don't think the Chattanooga Red Wolves are going to. I don't even know if they'll get off the ground. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. So why does nobody in any position of power or authority have a brain and look at that and go, they get 15 and change for the NPSL, oh, we're gonna duplicate or replicate or surpass that? No, you're gonna draw some of the people off of that, and it's bad for everybody.
Yeah. But isn't that what happens at all levels of soccer in this country? Mm-hmm. There's always division, and it just winds up, instead of having one group of everybody going in the same direction, we break and fracture it up, into all these little things that interfight and go different ways. And no, I don't like the way you dot your I's and cross your T's, so I'm going to take my toys and go somewhere else kind of attitude. It's sickening.
Everybody loses.
Yeah, it does.
There was another champion that was crowned in addition to Atlanta United. The Louisville City won another title, and so they celebrated that victory. But then, days later, tragedy struck as Wayne, and I hope I'm saying this right, Estopanol, who is the owner and founder of Louisville City, was killed in a plane crash in southern Indiana. I think he was going from Louisville to Chicago. And our thoughts and prayers, of course, go out to his family and to everyone associated with Louisville City. But, here is a man who, in his life, built many things, as that was his profession, to literally build things. And I believe that he built the most sustainable team outside of MLS, right? As far as sustainability, and the one team that could, if USL had a different structure, stand completely on its own and be just fine. The success that they have had over the course of the time that they have been in the lower divisions of soccer is a tribute to him and to his life and to his legacy, and really to everybody involved with that. Now we have to shift our focus, though, from I guess admiring them to looking at them and say, all right, what do we have to do to get points off of this this team, which is a team that is consistently good, especially at home. And so they are a team that a lot of people like to follow and model as far as the structure goes. They are entertaining. They score a lot of goals. and have had. In fact, they had the Golden Boot winner in all of USL this last year. They play in a baseball stadium.
Not for long, though.
Not for long. That's true. They do play in a baseball stadium, and so for now, and so they are a group that I've looked at and said, can 901 FC emulate this model, and can they meet with the same success? Cities that are about, I mean, we're actually bigger than Louisville. They are a basketball city, no question. We're a basketball city, no question. Can Memphis try to, or not try to, but can they come close to replicating the success on and off the field?
One thing that I think is going to be fascinating is I think this probably might end up as being the best rivalry in the USL just because of the history between Memphis and Louisville. You look going back in basketball, and a lot of what you just outlined is the cities are very similar in size. They're both river cities. They're both basketball towns. They're both, big-time college basketball programs. And those were some, intense, heated rivalries back in the day. Denny Crum v. Dana Kirk, Rick Pitino v. John Calipari. And so I think from an off-the-field perspective, when those two teams meet, it's going to be a fantastic game day experience. And the model is, and you always have to, the expectation has always been for new teams that get started up, okay, we got to give it time, you're new to the league, still kind of get it figured out. Atlanta United and MLS has blown that theory out of the water, and Louisville City and the USL has blown that theory out of the water. They've finished no worse than second place in the Eastern Conference every single year of their existence. They've gone to the Eastern Conference Finals every single year of their existence, and they've won back-to-back USL titles, and they've made a pair of reasonably deep runs in the US Open Cup. And this past season, they were the last non-MLS team standing. They got all the way to the quarterfinals, and I think they lost to the Chicago Fire. Yeah. But they knocked out the Brad Friedel and the New England Revolution along the way. So that's a tall task for Memphis City, but I think it's just we're gonna have to. Maybe it sounds like a cop out, but it's just we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. And the one thing that Louisville and Atlanta in their own scope have in common is they had tremendous support from the community. And, when the owners see the place getting flooded and people attending the games and having all this energy, they will invest back into the team. And we will get better players. And not that any of ours are not good now, but, they will keep investing in the team and in resources and in expanding, our outreach for, players and everything else, and it feeds on itself. So yeah. There's my ploy to tell everybody to go buy more season tickets.
Well, the United States of America will soon be playing in the Women's World Cup in 2019 in France. There are 24 teams. The number one seeds that had eligibility for being in each of the groups: France, Germany, Australia, England, Canada, and the United States. And the United States were drawn into the last group, Group F, in a save the best for last kind of theory or approach there. I know it's supposed to be luck of the draw, but we're going to have several days of hype as we are preparing for the United States to take the field in the last group. So we might be watching France and Korea on the first day of the Women's World Cup. We might be watching Germany and China on the second day of the Women's World Cup, but it does not compare with the hype that we will be building toward, as we will be, like, the whole entire time. Let's say it starts on the 5th. I don't know exactly what is the date that it starts, but the first U.S. match is on the 11th, so we will be building towards that June 11th match constantly. I think that'll be a pretty fun week, as while you're watching all these other matches, you're constantly doing stories that whoever is carrying this, I think it's Fox, will be constantly doing stories getting ready for that U.S. game at the end of the week. I kind of like the fact that we were, from that point of view, I like the fact that we were drawn into Group F.
Yeah. What do you think about this group? I mean, it's got Thailand, Chile, and Sweden.
Now, Sweden has given us fits in the
Yes,
past.
and I saw, and that's one that you saw. You're oh, we knew that was going to happen.
It's like
I mean, it seems like every major international tournament that the women play in, and I'm sorry, the She Believes Cup and the Tournament of Nations are nothing but glorified friendlies. And if Woso Twitter wants to nail me to a tree for that, fine. But it's like the Olympics, Women's World Cup, Olympics, women's. Every time you look up Sweden. Sweden again. Sweden.
Yeah.
But I mean,
but we can still get out. I mean, like even if we lose to Sweden, we're going to get out of that group.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I'm glad you put it that way. To me, if I don't, how do I want to say this? But getting out of the group should not be the goal.
Well,
winning.
Sure,
should
the
be
women
the goal. And here
have always made it to the semifinals.
Yes, except the last time they ran into Sweden at an international tournament, which was the Olympics.
No, I'm talking about World Cup.
World
Cup only.
Prior to, even including Olympics, prior to the 2016 Rio Olympics, the U.S. women's team had never failed to make the semifinals at any major international tournament ever.
Right.
Ever.
And Sweden was the reason we did not.
Yes, and it actually kind of befuddled me that anybody that mentioned that was the worst women's performance at any tournament ever got lumped into this group that all of a sudden everyone thought that they hated the women's team. I said,
or that the sky was falling, and we know it's not falling.
That game was the end of Hope Solo too,
and
it was.
Well,
because
the sky may not be falling, but the gap between the rest of the world and the U.S. is closing fast.
Okay, France is better. They're much better.
Yes.
They're better than they've ever been. Germany is better. They've been good. They've won World Cups. Germany has been good. You can make the case that Australia and Brazil are both better. The game is definitely catching on in England. England is better. It took a while. It took a while in England, but England is much better. Canada, we know them. We're familiar with them. And Sweden is a lot better. Any of those teams I would even put, definitely Norway in the past. I don't know about Norway now, but I would put Norway in that group. Any of those could conceivably win the World Cup, and it wouldn't be that big of a shock. So, in order to combat this idea that, the rest of the world has closed the gap on us,
would it go out and win?
You've got to go out and win.
Go out and win, and put 9 past Thailand, put 5 past Chile, put 4 past Sweden. Even in winning the Women's World Cup in 2015, the narrative that the rest of the world was closing the gap still kind of hung around because how many 1-0, 2-1. They didn't until they played Germany in that semifinal. They didn't look convincing at all. And everybody all of that gets lost in the fact that we dropped 5 on Japan's head in the first 20 minutes of the game.
Right.
But the fact that the world had gotten better made that victory more sweet. Yeah. I'm just talking about that winning that World Cup. We weren't even the favorites to win that World Cup, so winning it made it feel great.
A lot of that was after the Olympics when Japan had beat us too. So
yeah, that's true.
We beat Japan in the Olympics in 2012, and we lost them in the final in 2011.
Oh, okay, I got that backwards.
Yeah, but it was still right. The memory of all of that was So
look, a little bit of statistics. We've only played Thailand once. They're ranked 29th in the world. We beat them.
That's not bad. That's higher than I thought.
Right, but we've only played them once. We should win that game. That's our first game. We should win that easily.
I believe that Thailand game was actually the first one after the Olympics in 2016.
Yeah,
I think.
Chile is 38th in the world. We played them twice. Again, 1, 2, lost none. That's our second game. We should win that convincingly. We play Sweden last. Sweden plays us last.
For the group. We should both be 2-0
We should both be 2-0 with a crap load of goals for and hardly any against. It'll be a slugfest. It'll come down to, who gets the 1 seed in the group of 16 and who gets the 2. And, that's what you want. Sweden, by the way, is ranked 9th right now in the world. So they are one of the better of the second teams in each group. That's no surprise.
They'll sit back though. They'll sit back and defend.
I just hope that was a bad word. I really wish that Hope Solo was a commentator on that game. If somebody at Fox is listening, that would be great.
Fox will find a way, because Fox they
would
don't give these tournaments the respect that they deserve. They try to emulate what First Take does with NBA and NFL talk, and it's basically what is the most outrageous thing we can say to get. It's like it's all hot takery. And I mean they're from a broadcast perspective, like the number of games they put on network TV for the World Cup this past summer, I thought was outstanding. That was something that we didn't really see too much of from ESPN. But production, like the cast of characters they had was appalling. And I love Gus Hiddink, but he was an old senile grandpa on that set, and it's going to be more of the same at the Women's World Cup. It's going to be, it's just going to be homerism and cheerleading. There's not going to be any insight or analysis. It's just going to be, and one thing that I think is going to hurt them. Two things. A, it's being played at the same time as the Gold Cup. I'm not sure why CONCACAF decided to.
I wondered about that.
Well, because remember in 2015, and I think in 2015 the Women's World Cup was in June, and then the Gold Cup was in July. I'm not sure why they didn't do that this time around, and I think part of the reason is in 2015 it was the Women's World Cup was in North America. Yeah. And so they didn't want overlapping audiences or whatever. But what's going to hurt Fox is you got the Gold Cup going on at the same time, so you're going to have some of your talent is going to have to stay here because they got the right, because they have a monopoly on the rights to international tournaments for the next decade, and another thing that's going to hurt them in terms of ratings is it's in France. It's not in Canada. Yeah. Like TV, it was excellent TV viewing times for the most part during the last Women's World Cup. Yeah. I mean, people will get up and watch the U.S. But is somebody going to get up at 7:30 in the morning to watch Norway and Nigeria?
They will. They'll no, but they'll watch if we make it to the finals.
They're gonna. It's the final, and
people will watch. The ratings numbers were outstanding for it last time. I think 28 million.
It was for the final drew 25 million. Although I was actually surprised to learn that none of the other games at that tournament drew over 10.
Really,
which I thought was interesting. And contrast that with the least rated men's game in Brazil was over 10 million.
Hopefully that'll improve this time around.
Eric Winalda has confirmed basically what you were talking about with hot takes. He said that when he really suffered during his presidential bid for U.S. soccer because people thought that he really was the jerk that he plays on TV. And he says at Fox, we are kind of built on a hot take every minute kind of thing, and he said a lot of things that were exaggerated versions of what he believed.
It's funny you mentioned that because when in September I had the opportunity to be in the press box for US Mexico in Nashville, and Fox loves to roll out Fernando Fior, El Presidente, and he basically just plays a cartoon character.
Right.
And I met him in the press box in
Nashville. He's totally normal.
Super sharp and intelligent and well spoken and very studious in the way he spoke, and I was watching him during the game because he was in the row in front and probably about 3 seats to the left. He was very judicious, taking notes, looking at stuff, and then you watch him on Fox and it's like a cartoon character. It's like if it was anything else
like Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah, like it's almost as if like I feel like if Fox thought that they could get away with putting like a serape and salsas and a sombrero on him, I feel like they would do that.
Right.
Because when he's on TV, he just says crazy things with the Spanish accent, and everyone's like, oh, that's woohoo, El Presidente.
Or that is the embodiment of the Latino soccer culture, right? That's kind of that's what he was that's the role that he was playing,
The pandering.
The stereotype.
Exactly. That's Fox. They pander. And they treat soccer competitions like they're trying to replicate. I feel like, and this was a thought I just randomly had maybe a couple days ago, but they try to do it like everybody else tries to do the NBA, where it's we want you to focus on 3 players in the world, and everything else is totally irrelevant and meaningless. Right. And it's with flip on. You could be LeBron ate dinner last night. What does that mean for the Lakers' future? Right. Where in Fox it was all. Is this Messi's last World Cup? Is this Ronaldo's last Cup? Well, did they make it to who's playing in the final? France, and they got cool players.
And somebody else,
and Croatia. Luka Modric plays at Real Madrid, so that's the only Croatian player we're going to talk about. Blah blah. It was,
yeah, it's almost like they had no real knowledge of soccer, which is a little bit sad.
It's disrespectful to the soccer viewing public. We don't think you know anything about anybody other than Messi, Ronaldo, or England. But so we're gonna because we don't know anything about anything else about that, so we're going to assume that you don't, and we're going to give you as much broadcast such and let me tell you what, and I feel like more people might know a little bit about the Nigerian men's soccer team than they do about the Nigerian women's soccer team. So you think them doing a Nigeria Croatia game in the World Cup, in the men's World Cup, was bad. Nigeria v Norway in a women's World Cup is just going to be so there's a soccer game today.
What was the what were the ratings like for in the men's World Cup for games that did not involve the aforementioned England, Messi, and Ronaldo?
Oh, I did try to keep track of those. They were across the board. Ratings were down in Russia compared to where they were in Brazil, and that's just the viewing slots. That's just the time difference.
Yeah. But we still had pretty decent numbers.
There were 1 or 2 games I think that drew under 1 million, but those were like the 7:30 FS2 games, which games on FS2 are going to draw marginal numbers anyway, just because it's not available in a substantial amount of homes.
That's true. I don't have FS2.
And that's a carriage dispute that Comcast, I believe, has with a number of people. But
so let's transition to let's keep it in Europe. Okay, we're going to go a little bit. We're going to go a little bit east and a little bit west of France and talk about the cities of Leipzig and Manchester. We have a couple of U.S. men's national team players who are going to find those 2 destinations as their new homes. The worst kept secret in MLS this season is that Tyler Adams would be going to Red Bull Leipzig in Germany when the season ended. And what we did not know, which was a pleasant surprise, Zach Steffen to Man City. Now, we're not ignorant here. We don't think that he's going to take Ederson's place anytime soon or at all. But Man City has a pattern, just like Chelsea, of loaning players out to clubs on the continent where they are going to get some actual playing time, and I could see that for Zach Steffen in this scenario.
Yeah, it's
and Tyler Adams.
I'm sure Jurgen Klinsmann is somewhere smiling and saying, "Why did nobody do this when I was in charge?" But Zach Steffen doesn't have anything to prove in MLS, and you're only going to get better by going to Europe. And do I think he's going to see a minute?
He started out in Europe, and then he came back.
Do I think he's going to see a minute of playing time at Manchester City? No, I don't.
Never.
Yeah. Not even a snowball's chance in hell, I don't think. But here's the thing.
Could you get him into like a Sporting Lisbon?
Well, and that's what I was getting to. Is even if you don't, you might somehow luck into it. Like, everybody could get injured. It's happened, and then all of a sudden, there you are playing in the Premier League. It could unlikely, yes. Possible, sure. But do we think that playing in Portugal is better than playing in MLS? I happen to think it is. And Sporting Lisbon's one of those teams that pops up in the Champions League every other year. Mm-hmm. And so I mean, look at what Ethan Horvath did in the Champions League just this week. So I think that is a good thing. Man, I do wonder sometimes about American players that get linked to the Premier League, because I think that's where your European career will go to die if you're an American player. But like Tyler Adams going to Germany, I think is fantastic, because a lot of those German clubs have proven willing and able to develop and play American players. And then you've got Jesse Marsh is over there as an assistant with Red Bull. There's another Salzburg. Okay, I know, because there's like 3 Red Bulls over there. So that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, and remember, both of those guys are still very young. And as we pointed out in our last podcast, for the men's national team in the next World Cup cycle, their development over the next few years is going to be key. Are they playing at the level now that we need them to be playing at, for a World Cup cycle? No. But in 4 years, they could be. They need to be in the best development opportunity they can to help the U.S. men's national team. And, you could argue one's better than the other or whatever, but, playing in Europe in a German system or under the Manchester City system, they're going to be in the discussion for some of the best player developers out there. So I think this is huge for the U.S. men's national team. They're going to be playing at a high level in high level leagues, whether they get loaned out or whatever. They're still going to have exposure to the training and the system and everything. I think it's huge for them. I am very happy for both those youngsters.
Marsh is also at Leipzig, so.
He is at Leipzig.
Adams will be playing with his former coach. Now, he is not the head coach; he's an assistant coach. But
my understanding is that this is just from what I've read, that at some point they kind of expect, like, he's almost a head coach in waiting. Okay. And there is another, like, whoever is there now or whoever was there last season, there's already another head coach in waiting, but they don't expect him to stick around too long, and they kind of expect March to take over from him. That's I could be wrong, but I think that's the way that's playing out.
Okay.
By the way, I'm all in for Jesse Marsh for 2022 to 2026 World Cup cycle. Hey, I'm all in on that.
That sounds good, especially if he gets a lot of experience.
Yes, if he's winning games and managing in Europe, after he's won multiple trophies in MLS, unlike some other people I could mention.
Right. Speaking of,
good segue.
It is time for us to get to what we'll call the Berhalter situation. This has been a situation over the course of one full calendar year, actually a little bit more, where here's what I think happened. This is just, I'm piecing together some things. After October the 10th, 2017, Sunil Gulati said, I'm going to wait for and let the next president of the U.S. Soccer Federation have free reign to hire our new coach. However, by the time that process took place on February the 10th, the MLS teams were already in training camp, and the desire to not pull an MLS head coach out of training camp for the MLS season is something that became Carlos Cordero probably said, I want to have my GM in place, and once I have my GM in place, he can do that. And nobody wanted to leave during the MLS season because, of course, the MLS season is so incredibly important. But we have Lawrence Dockery to tell us the truth about what happened here, and, more importantly, what he thinks about it. The facts are these. Greg Berhalter is the head coach of the United States men's national team. For better or worse, hopefully not until death do us part. Lawrence Dockery, what did you think about the hire?
I thought the hire was low rent garbage.
Mm-hmm.
You got a guy in Berhalter, And yes, the process and the wait to get him played a big part of it. But even if he gets hired in December of 2017 instead of December of 2018, it's just as much low rent garbage then as it is now. Here's why. Because in his career, the dude has managed 239 games. You want to take a guess at how many of them he has won? 93.
Oh
man, I was going to lowball at 100.
Yeah, 93.
So I would have been.
He has proven himself a loser at 2 different clubs on 2 different continents. He couldn't cut it in the Swedish second division at Hammarby. Then he comes to Columbus. Okay, you know what? Yeah, Columbus. Yeah, sure, fine, whatever. Did he, in 5 seasons in Columbus, he won 0 MLS Cups. In 5 seasons in Columbus, he won 0 U.S. Open Cups. In 5 seasons in Columbus, he won 0 Supporter Shields. And I'll go a little bit deeper on that. His career, his record in Columbus was, give me 1 second and I can find that. His counting MLS regular season, MLS Cup playoffs, U.S. Open Cup, career record in Columbus: 75 wins, 71 losses, 47 draws. That's a 51% win percentage, and that's using the formula where you divide the number of draws by 2 and add it to the wins, and then divide by the total number of games. That's what I call win percentage. Now, if you just divide the 75 by the total number of games, I call that pure win percentage.
I thought you said math wasn't your strong point. You couldn't count to 10 from a minute ago.
That's true. That was longer than a few minutes ago. But this is when I had like an actual calculator. Like I said, I've been working on this since July, so I was triple and quadruple checking my numbers as I went. Digging deeper, not only did he never win MLS Cup, he went to MLS Cup final 1 time, and that 1 time he did not have his team ready to play because they gave up 2 goals in the first 7 minutes of the game. He never won the U.S. Open Cup, and in fact, in no edition of that tournament did he win more than 1 game. Like, there was no deep run where, they got upset, or no, they just lost in the first or second round every single time. Not only did he never win a Supporter Shield, he never finished in the top 3, and he had a worst finish of 18th out of 20 back in 2016. And never qualified for the CONCACAF Champions League. You know why he never qualified for the CONCACAF Champions League?
Because he was one and done in the playoffs.
Because to qualify for the CONCACAF Champions League, you have to be a champion. You have to win something.
Hence the name.
Exactly. He did not. Also, he plays creative, attacking soccer, blah, 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 blah. He finished with a negative goal difference in 2 of his 5 seasons in charge. 2016, he was -8, and this year he was -2. Let's also not forget that this year they won 2 of their last 10 games and damn near blew their spot in the MLS Cup playoffs. Oh, well, he went to the playoffs 4 times in 5 seasons. What did he win? Well, it's not all about winning. If it's not all about winning, what are we doing this for?
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, well, you can put, and the excuses, he had a low payroll. Okay, so he had a low payroll. That means he couldn't get good players, right?
Or couldn't get the most out of his players, or he's not developing players.
So low payroll means low quality players, which means few wins, no trophies, right? What does anybody think this U.S. job is? Is he walking into, is Kylian Mbappe walking through that door?
Nope.
We have world-class talent. Come on.
Is Luka Modric walking through that door?
Nope.
Oh, so you mean to tell me that a guy who didn't do great with not great players is all of a sudden going to start doing great with not great players? I don't track that logic. Also, a number of the Columbus Crews players have become U.S. men's national team mainstays. Will Trapp, Jossie Zardes,
Zardes just went there. He used to be with the Galaxy, so
I do know
he's
that.
a transfer.
But he has played better for the Columbus Crew because they actually played him at forward instead of out on the wing.
Yeah,
he has feet of stone. I watched him, Jossie Zardes, I kid you not, in the press box during pregame warm-ups in Nashville. He was inside the 6-yard box across, somebody crossed a ball in and he went to tap it in and he sent it 15 rows into the stands behind the goal. I kid you not.
Sounds about right.
But so all of a sudden, Greg Berhalter, the Columbus Crews coach and the Columbus Crews players couldn't win in MLS, but all of a sudden the Columbus Crews coach and the Columbus Crews players are going to start winning at the international level. Don't track that logic.
Well, Stefan's with Man City now, so.
He's no longer a crew player.
I would take Ethan Horvath at this moment in time over Zach Steffen. So, also, 4 games over 500 in Columbus. 4 games. Somehow, somebody, Grant Wall, decided that he was alluring before the USA Columbia game. He's like, Greg Balter is a very alluring hire. What is so alluring about winning 50% of your games and winning no trophies? And, I also had people during discussions of this not come up to me physically, but on the interwebs, yell at me, well, what about points per game? You can't just use trophy count and win percentage. That's not fair, blah, 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 blah. Okay, points per game. Greg Berhalter checked in at 1.44 points per game. A number of other names that popped up for this job. Tata Martino, 1.8. Peter Vermees, 1.58. Oscar Pereira, 1.53. Greg Vanney, 1.52. Caleb Porter, 1.5. So by any variety of metrics, Greg Berhalter is the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th best option in MLS, but is all of a sudden the best option for the men's national team. Don't track that logic. Career has won 50% of his games. Each of the last 3 cycles, the U.S. men's national team has won exactly 63% of its games. They went 38, 20, and 8 from 06 to 10. They went 37, 18, and 13 from 10 to 14. And then from 14 to 17, they went 33, 16, and 13. That's 63%, 3 consecutive cycles. Can somebody please explain to me how a 50% winner career is going to take a 63% winner and make them better? Then,
Columbus Crew could probably beat Trinidad and Tobago.
well,
maybe that's their logic.
I don't know if that's true.
and that's another thing. Well, he's going to get us back to the World Cup. I'm sorry, but when you have a cataclysmic failure, the bar for success should not be lowered.
No, you're right.
Look, does anybody else have a major problem with the fact that his brother is the vice president?
That's and Carlos Cordero, Ernie Stewart, they can all, as much as they want, they can all say he didn't have anything to do with it, blah 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 blah. No, there's not a sane, rational human being out there that believes that. Maybe the people in the Good Old Boys Club who carry the water for the program in their heart of hearts believes that, but I don't. Not for 1 second. I don't. And you know what? Maybe Jay Berhalter had no say in hiring Greg. You know who Jay Berhalter had a say in hiring? Ernie Stewart. Who hired Greg Berhalter? Ernie Stewart.
Right.
By the way, do you know what those 3 people have in common? Jay Berhalter, Greg Berhalter, and Ernie Stewart? They are collectively boring.
Yes, that is.
Oh my goodness, they are so boring.
I believe the word I used in my article to describe that press conference was milk toast.
Oh.
A milk toast press conference with no emotion, no, it's a heavy dose of cliches. Hey, Greg, what's the style of play that your team's going to use? We're going to take the ball from the other team and we're going to score goals. Oh my God! Oh boy!
We've unlocked soccer.
This is groundbreaking
That's
insight and revelation. That is, how has nobody ever thought of this before? But no,
That's all it takes, though.
I'm going to circle back to the process, right? Has either of you ever seen the movie GoldenEye?
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Pierce Brosnan as James Bond, Judi Dench as M.
Yeah.
You know the scene right after Ourumov blows up Severnaya with the GoldenEye missile, and James Bond's sitting there having a drink with M in her office, and she says, I've just been on the phone to Moscow. They say it was a training accident during a routine exercise. And Bond sits there and looks at her and goes, governments change, the lies stay the same.
Okay, yeah.
Does that sound like any other situation in this that we can think of? Bruce Arena. Yeah, sure, he's gone. Sunil Gulati stepped down. Yeah, okay. Dan Flynn is going to step down next year. We got a new GM position. That's a lot of upheaval, right? That's a lot of change, and it needed to happen, right?
Nothing has changed.
On the money. The new president was best friends with the old president. Also, Carlos Cordero is one of the most. I bumped into him and tried to speak to him at the press conference in Nashville, and the dude could not wouldn't look at me, couldn't wait to get away. Prior to getting involved with U.S. Soccer, he's been involved with U.S. Soccer for like 10 years. So you're all obviously qualified to be the most powerful man in the Federation. You know what Carlos Cordero's occupation was before he ended up at U.S. Soccer?
It was Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, that is correct. He was an executive with Goldman Sachs. U.S. Soccer's new president is a banker.
Mm-hmm. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
The second, the third most powerful man is Jay Berhalter, brother of the new coach, the new GM. Which, by the way, remember when U.S. Soccer said we're going to hire a coach at the conclusion of the World Cup because we want to see who's available? And I was like, you know what? That's fair. Yeah. That's reasonable.
Right.
Juan Carlos Osorio might become available, or we don't know who. Somebody always gets the axe. Yogi Löw might get the axe. Although I have no idea why Germany did not fire him, because if you're Germany, that should not have been an acceptable result. That's since World War II, since they were allowed back in 1954 after World War II, they had never not made the quarterfinals, and they finished bottom of the group. Oh, yeah. That's not acceptable. Nope. But Ernie Stewart didn't start the GM job until August, which is when all the European club season starts, so all the managers are snapped up. Red flag. What?
Why didn't we have a general manager in place in the spring to scout the World Cup?
And that's another thing. And it's so frustrating and so mind-boggling, and I don't get it. And yes, Ernie Stewart's credentials are impeccable. He's been in the front. He played for the U.S. at 3 World Cups, and he scored at one of them. Okay, he's had front office jobs at 2 clubs in the Netherlands and 1 club in MLS. But having good credentials doesn't mean you are above reproach. It doesn't mean we can't sit here and go, "What the hell are you doing? Why did you wait?" Well, we all know why he waited, and I don't know if anybody caught this, but during Berhalter's press conference, Ernie Stewart was up there with the alligator or with the crocodile tears or whatever they are. I'm too mad to think straight. He's up there crying that we did have a list, and there was one candidate that I did want to interview, but he had already moved on and taken another job. I almost started screaming at my computer, like, what? You're going to complain that somebody didn't want to wait until December to get interviewed? Are you effing kidding me? Are you have the balls to get up there and say that when everybody is sitting here pissed off that you've taken 14 months to name a head coach, and you're going to sit there and cry that somebody didn't want to wait for you? Are you kidding me? And by the way,
we could at any point in 13 months, at any point, literally any day. Let's just name a day.
Greg Berhalter wasn't going anywhere.
No,
he was not in high demand. Mexico wasn't on the phone going, "Hey, Greg Berhalter, come down." Yeah. Oh, by the way, you know who Mexico's got now? Tata Martino. Yeah. You know who 3 days after the game in Trinidad on October the 13th? You know who I advocated in a big long piece for World Soccer Talk? Advocated U.S. Soccer to hire Tata Martino.
He wasn't qualified.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right.
Where all has he coached again?
He took Paraguay to the World Cup quarterfinals and then to the Copa America final. He took Argentina to back-to-back Copa America finals. He had Newell's Old Boys as the best club in Argentina. He's had Atlanta United on top of MLS. He managed at Barcelona.
They're a little peon club. They're nothing compared to Columbus.
They're no Real Salt Lake.
That's right.
That's true.
Again, he was not qualified.
You got to speak English. You got to speak English. Oh, okay.
He could have taken Justin with him to translate everything.
That's right.
But I think, which is the
I'd
funniest
rather
thing
have
of
a
MLS.
Spanish-speaking manager with a translator and do well.
Justin became like a rock star this year.
I know.
Tata would go on like a 10-paragraph answer, and Justin would summarize it in 2 sentences. It was great.
My favorite Tata moment this year was after they in late May when they went down to Orlando, and remember Orlando fans were throwing all the trash on the field that game, and he was in the post-game press conference, and he crumpled up his empty water bottle and threw it in the trash can and got up and just very quietly said, "LeBron," and walked out. I was like, This man understands the American sporting landscape. Fill a brake
does.
truck with cash and pay him $7 million a year to coach this team.
But he,
by the way,
which he would have done, but he didn't
yeah.
speak English, so he was not considered.
No, and he would have. And here's why I think he would have done it, because he gave 2 quotes, and I used them in my article. Let me find them. Where are we?
While you're finding them, remember that our new coach, was described as uniquely American. He
That's
will
encouraging.
be uniquely American.
I thought fiercely,
Uniquely.
and fiercely American.
Fiercely American.
If fiercely American means losing 2-1 into Trinidad and Tobago, that was long since eliminated.
Fiercely American. Fiercely American Berhalter.
Nothing says fierce like Greg Berhalter. With yeah,
Uniquely and fiercely American.
but no. Here's what Tata said. Several weeks ago that they were asking him. He said they're like, how come you never express interest in the U.S. job? And he's like, well, I never expressed interest in the U.S. job because he doesn't feel like it. He felt it would be a waste of time to think about possibilities that don't seem realistic or likely. And you're like, oh damn, man, this dude wanted to coach this team, and
It wasn't realistic or likely because he didn't speak English.
And Ernie Stewart's a D-bag and wanted Jay Berhalter's brother because he used to play with him, and he's an American and he'll be a yes man.
Speak English.
And
Well, we get hung up on that whole musties, but he knew the situation with the personalities and what was going on.
But here's another thing. Not maybe 3 weeks ago, he and that's another thing about writing this. I've been working on this article since July. Is it seems like once or twice a week I got a new nugget of information, and I would be able to work it in there and move some stuff around. But he said that somebody asked him, what's it like being linked to multiple jobs all the time. He said the first thing that I think about when I'm linked to multiple jobs is to think about all the places that didn't want me. I'm thinking, well, gee, who's a shot at that across the bow at? I might wonder. Especially given that he's about to coach that particular team's biggest rival. And by the way, the first time Tata plays Greg Berhalter with the talent that Mexico's got, 5-0. I'm calling it right now. It's going to be a bloodbath.
Okay, so let's point this out. We need to wrap this up fairly soon, but let's at least point this out. Even with all of the qualifications that eliminate Tata Martino, that eliminate, any fill-in European coach of your choice here.
How about the current, the former Real Madrid and Spain manager who was begging to coach the team, and Ernie Stewart told him to piss off.
Okay, eliminate him. No, he wasn't qualified. Anybody from South America, Central America, eliminate them all. Still. If you're sticking to MLS,
you got the fifth best American MLS manager.
If your number one qualification is that he must be an MLS manager,
Peter Vermees
is still so much better. He's still so much better. He wanted the job, no matter what he says. He wanted the job.
No. Here's the thing. He went on Tony Miola's podcast on SiriusXM and said that Dan Flynn promised him an interview. And then several weeks, a week or two after the Peru game, radio silence. Nobody ever reached out to him. That right maybe pissed me off more than anything, because you know what? If you want to say it's got to be an American MLS coach, you know what? That's stupid and that's narrow-minded. But you know what? That's what we'll have to live with. If you're not even going to consider the best American MLS coach who speaks English. Your head needs to be on the chopping block right now. You need to be run out of town on a rail. Peter Vermees has won 1 MLS Cup, 3 U.S. Open Cups, and never missed the playoffs. It should be noted, on a similar budget to what Greg Berhalter has
in a small
Columbus.
Market.
Yes.
There was an article by Paul Tenorio in The Athletic. Peter Vermees' singular attention to detail makes him the perfect coach for Sporting Kansas City, but would it work for the U.S. men's national team?
I thought that article came from the Kansas City Star.
I
seem to remember reading that, but I don't have an subscription to The Athletic.
But the interesting here is that there are a couple of things that are very interesting about the Vermees situation. In addition to him doing everything that he can do at Sporting Kansas City, the brand new United States men's national team complex
Oh, that's right.
is also the new Sporting Kansas City complex.
How convenient.
We have been offered a tour if we want to go. The guy who built it is a guy I interviewed last year for Midfield Press, and he has said, come on out if you want to see it. So we might need to put that on our list of things to do.
Sure.
But it's the same complex. He wouldn't even have to move, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, and that's another thing. Speaking of moving, the requirement that the coach would have to live in Chicago. Did you see U.S. Soccer put out that ridiculous thing? They had this picture of
Why?
Berhalter moving into the U.S. Soccer house with all his luggage.
Why?
Like, not only does he have to live in Chicago, but he has to apparently live at the U.S. Soccer house like he's like a college student living in a dorm or something.
Why? Kansas City's in the smack middle of the country, and it has the new training facility.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all.
But it's U.S. Soccer, so why would it?
True.
Why would it?
So here's my question for you, Lawrence. 2022, will Berhalter still be coaching the team? You think he'll last that long?
Yes. He's a yes man. He will tell them what they want to hear. He will do what they ask him to do. His brother's in charge.
If it turns out to be the disaster like a lot of people think it will, and you know, obviously you do, I'm not sold one way or another, but we'll get into that at a different time. Do you think, you know, there's any chance that it will fall apart and become obvious before then? I mean, Gold Cup is just next year. What if we get run out of town?
Oh, we might do that.
Yeah. Well, no. They will apply the same logic they applied to Klinsmann, where they will say his
Takes
job.
time.
His job's not in jeopardy until qualification becomes an issue.
That's when you replace people when you're halfway through qualification. That's real smart.
So that's
if
when
we
you
get-
move
if we
the
get
proven winner, Bruce Arena.
If we
Exactly.
get bounced out of the Gold Cup early, I don't think it matters. It'll matter in the stands because people aren't going to pay to watch that garbage. But it won't matter to the good old boys club. They'll be like, oh, he's got to.
So you think he'll get a free pass for a while?
Yes, he's going to get a free pass for at least 3 years.
Wow. That's a long
To
free
me,
pass.
success is winning the 2019 Gold Cup. First off, then you have to completely dominate the Nations League, and I'm not sure how that's going to be set up, but you better win it. Next, by winning the Gold Cup, you qualify for the Confederations Cup in 2021.
Yeah.
You better make it out of the group stage there.
Well, we're not going to win the Gold Cup. We're not going to beat Mexico. That.
I know. You must also win the 2021 Gold. This is the minimum to me. What the minimum for success should be. You should win both Gold Cups. You should get to the knockout rounds of the Confederations Cup. You should win the Nations League, and you should finish top of the hex and make quarterfinals of the World Cup. Anything else is failure. And to sit there and say, oh, you know, runner up in the Gold Cup and World Cup group stage. That's what we brought him here to do. What's the point? Yeah. I mean, if all you aspire to be is a mid-major, then shut it down. If you're not in it to win it, if you don't want to win every single game possible, if all you're concerned about is your bottom line, which, by the way, your bottom line is affected when you're not winning. You can jack cheap seats to $300 all you want, but eventually you're going to be playing in front of 300 people. And then you will make your $1 million by charging $1 million a ticket.
Well, we have a banker in charge, so that'll be okay.
And lest we forget that Sunil Gulati was an economics professor in the Ivy League.
But we are not. we have not capitalized on what was a growing fan base.
It is shrinking, and that's I've actually got in my article, and then I have several more articles coming out about it. Attendance is down 37% over the last 3 years. We've had 3 consecutive years of attendance decline.
For the U.S. men's national team?
Yes, 2018 was the least attended year in 12 years for the U.S. The last time there were 3 consecutive years under 30,000 per game was 04, 05, 06.
We need to start moving them to Kansas City and Red Bull Arena, Orlando.
Well, that's where they're playing. That's where they're playing some of these games.
That one at StubHub Center was embarrassing.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. In what world? I mean, yeah, they sold out the game against Paraguay, but that was in a 9,000 seat stadium.
Yeah.
2 years ago, would they have ever dreamed of playing in a 9,000 seat stadium?
No.
TV ratings are down 55% since 2016.
So Atlanta United is drawing more fans than the men's national team is what you're saying.
Yes. And I don't think simply putting a men's national team game there would be the solution. I don't think it would. I think you can't use Mercedes-Benz Stadium for friendlies. That's got to be big-time games. That's got to be competitive games. And you can't,
like the Gold Cup semifinal where we lost to Jamaica.
Yeah, but that was at the old Georgia Dome, and that was totally inexplicable. I think part of that was Jamaica was getting hot at the right time, because if you remember, they had played in the Copa America the month before. Also, we had Michael Bradley on the field, so,
which solves everything.
Yes, he's the midfield general and the master of Zen. You know where you can shove his Zen.
So let's wrap this up because we're going to close the worst year that I can remember since I've been involved in U.S. soccer, which was 1994. That's when I came on board, 1994. This is the worst year that I could ever remember in U.S. soccer. It was one thing after another that was just like, what? Wait a minute, what? Hold on a second, what? I mean, it was just like constantly, why on earth is that happening? In fact, we got to a point the other day where the U.S. Soccer Foundation is suing the U.S. Soccer Federation.
Because the U.S. Soccer Federation said, no, your logo looks like yours, we're going to sue you and put you out of business. And they're like, got there first.
It's embarrassing. It is so dysfunctional. It is greedy. It is ridiculous. It is a laughing stock.
Well, next year we get to watch the women
That's
conquer the world. So we'll hang on that.
That's good.
Maybe we can copy what they do on the men's team. How does that work?
But
That's a different. It helps that they have a 30-year head start on the rest of the world, whereas we are 50 years behind the rest of the world on the men's
maybe
side.
100.
Maybe 100, yeah.
Look, but the women, seriously, nobody has had more problems with our federation than the women.
Oh, yeah.
And they were the first ones to start calling them out.
Yeah.
I think they could have done much better for themselves if their players' reps had not been so hardline insane. And when they got rid of Hope Solo and all of the old vets off of the players' union or whatever, then they got much more favorable terms, deals, that sort of thing. It's when they first filed, I think it was with the Equal Opportunity Commission or whatever, when they first filed that, you got the sense that it was them, like they not only did they want more, but they wanted to knock the men down a couple of pegs, which the men did themselves. But with what they've got now, the adversarial nature of it, I think, went away.
Yeah.
That they were more just concerned with getting what they could get, and they weren't concerned with winning.
Huge proponent for paying people what they're worth. And I think our women deserve as much as they can get. But, when it all comes down to it, you have to put emotion aside and, win losses aside. And it's about what sort of income does this product on the field actually generate. And if you look at TV ratings, the fact is the world does not watch women's soccer like they do men's soccer. And therefore, the advertising dollars doesn't come in. The stadium attendance is not equal. Even with a bad men's team, they're going to draw, more than the women's game. I wish it was different, because I wish their pay could reflect their success internationally. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. And I wish it was different for them, because, our women dominate. I mean, I would go out. It wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say our second women's team would be almost favorites to win the Women's World Cup. Mm-hmm. You could still have a discussion that they would have a good chance at winning the Women's World Cup. Our first team, they should win it. That's, if they're not in the final match, that's failure. And even then, they're going to be favored. So our women just dominate. I just wish their pay reflected that. But in a world where money doesn't care about wins and losses, it's unfortunate.
let's wrap this up. Josh Sargent scored in his first team debut. In fact, 2 minutes into his Bundesliga debut. That's pretty impressive. Pretty proud for Josh Sargent there.
I don't know if you call it a goal. It glanced off his head, but
Then he was standing on there. But you know what?
hey, we'll count it.
You got to be there.
You got to be there. That's right.
They all count the same.
Yeah, I'll be there. All right. Another thing. Let's play a little guessing game here. How many in the year 2018? Here at the end of 2018, how many U.S. players abroad does the Washington Post track on a weekend?
And I follow Steve Goff. It's over 100. I know. It's
Goodness.
157.
145.
Oh, I was close.
Pretty.
Wow.
145 players playing abroad. 145. This is Jurgen's dream world. This is exactly what he wanted.
Only if they're all in Europe.
Well, so we got a pretty good chunk in England.
By the way, does anybody think there's any coincidence that in 2013 Michael Bradley was starting for Roma and was without doubt the best player on the team, and then as soon as he came back to MLS and in Toronto, his form fell off the side of a mountain?
Well, there was the possibility, first of all, that he was going to go to they were trying to get him to an English team, and his dad says that they wouldn't look at him because he was American.
Well, I can see that, given that the way Swansea dumped Bob after, 7 games?
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, he wasn't winning, but I think he got a raw deal from Swansea. But all that aside, he was fighting for a roster spot week in and week out in Serie A. And then he came home to MLS. He doesn't have to try. All he has to do is show up, and he's 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he got comfortable, and he has. I mean, it's not like that 3-1 loss to Costa Rica in qualifying in 2013 when he injured, he broke his foot during warm-ups, and we just completely fell apart. He was even up through the Mexico friendly in 2014, where Miguel Herrera said he looked like the best player in the world. He did, and then he got to Brazil, and he's been garbage since.
And I think it's not just Michael Bradley, but soccer players over the course of their career, I think, and you see this pattern, and this is a large discussion, but they just become defeated at some point, and the effort goes away. You look at the 20-year-olds and the 22, the kids that are that age, they're gung-ho, they're excited to be out there, they're full of energy, full of passion. As the players get older, it's just show up, kick a ball around, and go home. Yeah. And they lose that. And that's what we saw this past year with all the old guard, with Michael Bradley, with a lot of the others. There's just, I don't know, the passion is gone. And I think that's largely the argument behind the out with the old, in with the new. Talent-wise, they're still some of the best players we have. But they don't act like they want to be there, and that passion just seems to be gone. And I don't know if there's anything that any one coach can do to bring that back. I think that's just a part of, lack of better words, growing old.
Man, with the exception of Weston McKennie, so many of these guys either didn't play the whole game or weren't even in the 18 for their teams. When did Emerson Hyndman go to Hibernian? I mean, that's such a lower level than what. I mean, he was on a trajectory to be a Premier League starter, and he has fallen off like so many of our guys.
He was at Rangers for a little while, wasn't he?
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and put a wrap on this emergency podcast in which we just had a ton of news. And we have discussed the new signings for Memphis 901 FC. We've discussed Atlanta and Louisville and their championships. We've discussed the U.S. Women's National Team and their draw for France 2019. We discussed Tyler Adams and Zach Steffen moving across the waters. And we have discussed Greg Berhalter, the new head coach of the United States men's national team. That about wraps us up. Alan Davis, any thing to on the Facebook page that we need to know about?
No, we just try to capture news tidbits, especially out of 901 FC or anything that relates to the men's national team, and pass it along.
Yep.
And college soccer's done, so not much news going on there.
Yeah.
Getting
ready for March.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got a really strong feeling that we are going to be at home that first weekend, March 8th and 8th or not, probably the 8th, Saturday the 8th. I feel like we're going to be at home. And also, another thing I want to say about 901 FC, I don't think this is the news cycle is going to stop here. I think from now until March, we're going to have a very steady stream of news. Player signings, we've still got assistant coaches that need to come on board, and I think there's going to be plenty to talk about from here on out. Lawrence Dockery, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you can read his work at World Soccer Talk, and you have got a new article coming out about attendance, and that'll be coming out here in the coming days. You can also read his thoughts on Greg Berhalter as well. But he will always be found, in the previews whenever the U.S. men's national team is playing in a friendly. We've got a couple of those coming up announced for the spring. So it'll be interesting to see what team is on the field after Camp Cupcake with Greg Berhalter. I'm going to say it will be 97% MLS guys.
I think that's low.
Yeah, probably is.
I think do we count Zach Steffen as MLS or European since he doesn't go to Europe until
hard to say.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to be out of here for now. Thank you for taking the time to be with us as we are just in a mopey and depressed state as American soccer fans. But thank you for bearing with us, and thank you for listening to the 901 Soccer Podcast.